Well, I'll leap in. I know Rick and I, when we were talking about this program, we thought what we do is just kind of give a brief story or kind of share about our own personal involvement in men's work, and then talk about a model that we've put together based upon our 35 years of working with men. And I'm going to just start off with my personal story and then pass it over to Rick, who many of you know. And my story, I lived in Australia for 14 years, and it was back in 1984. I remember standing in a group of 65 men in a community center. And the group had been organized to create men's groups. So it was 1984, and I looked around this group of 65 men, and I was terrified. I go, what the fuck am I doing here, you know? And I realized that it raised so much anxiety because my father had left the family when I was a young boy, and to be in a group of men was very threatening. But what I eventually came to recognize and feel that was my beginning entry into the world of men's groups. And I had shut down as a boy, like many of us, and I never heard the words from my father, I believe in you, I'm here for you, or I love you. And those Aussie brothers, when in working together and being that group, I get the feel from them. I really, they said to me, Leonard, we do believe in you. You know, we're here for you and we love you. And that was so healing for me in my life. And that started me on this whole trajectory of men's work and participating in them. And then when I moved back to Chicago, doing MKP Warrior 1992 in Wisconsin, just kept me escalating my involvement with men's work. And, you know, as Rick will probably share in his story, is that, you know, I've gone through difficult times. The men's groups have helped me through a 26-year divorce, my move to California. And when I moved to California, I said to myself, I got to be in a men's group, because when I was in Chicago, I was in one group for 17 years with the same guys. And as you know, wow, to be in with other men who are there to support and help us is so necessary for my psychological development. And then that also led me to hook up with this beautiful man, Rick, in an I group when I moved to California. And then we started working together to develop a model for healthy masculinity, which we'll talk after we share our story. So with that, Brother Rick, I'm passing the baton to you.
Thank you, Leonard. Good morning, brothers. Such a delight to be with all of you this morning. My name is Rick Broniec. I was initiated in March of 1990. So that would be 31 years ago in Hamelwoods in Kenosha, Wisconsin. As most of you know, I lived most of my life in Wisconsin and moved in 2014 out to San Diego, California, where I met this amazing man many of you are meeting for the first time, Leonard Szymczak. And we hit it off right away. We were both writers, we were both speakers, we were both coaches. He's a longtime therapist. And we agreed to begin working together, writing a book and doing webinars and so forth. So it's been a joy, not only to get to know Leonard in a professional capacity, but on a personal capacity. We've been in the same healing circle. We don't call it an I group anymore because it's 40% female. And we have people of all gender identities joining our group regularly. It's been going on now for 6 years. And so we've helped each other heal and learn and grow and cry together and laugh together, as many of you have. Before I go any further, I want to say something. One of my daughters, Janine, who's a veterinary cardiologist, just took a position in near Tampa, Florida, and just moved through this month. So she's nearby, and I may be coming down to visit soon. So, you know, kind of personally with some of you men. My story is a little different than Leonard's. Similar in some ways. We both had mentally ill parents. I had alcoholism in my household as well. But I had a father who was willing to tell me that he loved me and was proud of me. And I showed that in many, many ways. He hugged me and kissed me all the time, right up until, the day he died. So I had that amazing father connection that so many men yearn for. And getting into men's work was so important for me for other reasons. I had a huge mother wound, and I didn't know the side of my father that was unsuccessful, because he was so positive and so successful. And he was a salesman, so he showed this facade, this persona of everything's cool. And I needed to see the other side of that. Well, fast forward to 1991, the year after I did my training, unexpectedly, my father passed away from heart failure. I was literally the day after Christmas. I was with him on Christmas Day with my young family. We celebrated together with all my siblings. There was like 30 of us in the household. He was talking excitedly about a trip that he was going to do to Europe, which he had never done, and was, all his life had wanted to go to Greece. The very next day, he passed away from heart failure, just like that. And it was overwhelming. I immediately went into deep grief. And I did what I learned to do in the last year, and that was call my I group brothers. And I was fortunate enough to be in an amazing I group with Henry Thurman, who many of you know, and another Leonard Szymczak, who's a powerful gay brother, and many, many other men. And I was also very close with Rich Tosi and Bill Kalf. And I called those men and I said, I need you, and I need you right now. And the very next day, that circle of men came to my house, and they spent hours and hours with me. And I'll never forget that. I sat in a circle with those men on my living room floor, and I was grieving. And when I'd stop crying for a while. Somebody would say, tell me more about your father. And I'd tell another story, and I'd collapse in somebody's lap and cry some more. And this went on for hours and hours. And I'll never forget that. And that incredible, powerful healing of that circle cemented in my mind, my heart, and my soul the immense power of what we do. Now, I know I'm speaking to the choir for most of you. I'm sure you're all in groups, and Leonard and I have been in groups nonstop, in my case, for long before MKP, and Leonard's case also, 1984. Before MKP even started, Leonard was in a group. So that cemented him, and I have been nonstop in a men's group, or now in a mixed gender group, since maybe 88, 89, nonstop. And I go just about every week. I still do my work. I still have work to do, strangely enough, as my partner reminds me from time to time, and my friends. So the theme of this conference really called to me, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to speak to you about the power of community, the power of men's circles, and how we help each other heal. In that one story I shared, that was worth the price of admission to MKP. And I've had hundreds and hundreds of stories since then, just as you have. I've staffed with many of you men. We've shared so many precious moments together. And out of that, since we are writers and speakers, we have been thinking for a long time together, Leonard and I, how do we reach out to men in MKP and outside MKP with a model that helps us develop as whole men on every level, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. MKP gives us the basis for that, and with some powerful tools, but we wanted to expand on that a little bit. And so what we did is we created a model of masculinity, wholeness, that we call the classics model. And that's an acronym. And if you give me a moment here, I'll share screen and show you what that's about. Okay.
Yeah, if we can just add that, I think part of it is that we men are pioneers in the sense of we've got, traditional masculine ideology that pretty well dominates a lot of the world. And yet we are really trying to challenge that and change that. So obviously you men showing up here is I see MKP, we're pioneers to try to shift the consciousness of masculinity. And so, as Rick said, we put together this classics model. And if you want to put on the shift to the next one. So the classic stands for connection, love, authenticity, spirituality, sexuality, intention, community, and sovereignty. And Rick and I are just going to very briefly go through each one of these. And then we're going to have a breakout group that we're going to focus on questions so that this becomes more interactive. And so I'm going to just start with connection. So just think of the old model of masculinity is that we shut down our emotions and we disconnect from relationships. Where in this model, obviously, like us, we value emotional connection and we value relationships. And I don't know about you, I still wrestle. I mean, my career accomplishment has always tended to be at the top of my list. And relationships are there, but, accomplishing, achieving, that's something I've had to kind of rebalance my life to bring relationships more up there as really being important. So that's the first C, connection. And Rick and I will be ping-ponging back and forth with each one, Rick. So you want to take love?
Yeah, I always take love, absolutely. We call this our book and our power tools for men. Why? Well, first of all, it ties into our love of many of us of building things. We need to build a better life, build an increasingly aware, awake life. And these tools help us do that, we believe. So the second one, of course, is love. Now, love is fraught with lots of misunderstanding. Most men really don't have a clue what unconditional love is. Why? Well, of course, we were all loved conditionally. I'll love you if you behave this way. I'll love you if you do that. I'll love you if you make me proud, and so forth. Raise your hand if you've had that kind of love in your life. Most of us, yeah. And so how do we find authentic, whole, unconditional love in ourselves? We all know that it starts with loving ourselves first. And that means learning to love every piece of myself, even the stuff that I judge as dark, hurtful, and so forth. And that's why I still go to group, because I still find pieces of myself that I go, ooh, where'd that thought come from? Or where'd that judgment come from? So we believe that men can get there, that men can learn to really love each other and themselves unconditionally. And of course, that blesses our relationships, whether we're in a relationship with men or women or any other gender identity, relationships with our children, relationships with our group, of course. That is so critical to learn how to love. And then
I always think of the famous Rumi poem, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers you have built within yourself against it. Yeah. That's basically what we're doing is, sharing with an open heart and trying to overcome those barriers.
Yeah, and a big part of that, of course, is dealing with all the stories in our heads that we carry about our value, our lovability, and our capacity to love others.
So true. So I'm going to just shift to the authenticity because, for us men, I've been a therapist for over 40 years. And the biggest belief that we as men is we got to be tough, we got to be invulnerable. So men on the whole don't like therapy. And so when a man comes to see me in therapy, I says, it takes great balls of courage to come to therapy because it's a way, because we're really trying to really be authentic. We're trying to connect with vulnerability and to be men of integrity. And that's, all of MKP processes are about how can we really authentically relate to other men and with ourselves. So, there's so many processes in MKP about authenticity and integrity. we don't really need to go into that because it's so much a part. And Rick, I'm going to move into spirituality because I always save sexuality for Rick because that's kind of Rick's
inside joke.
So spirituality, I always think the old model of manhood is being performance driven, materialistic, whereas spirituality is about connecting within, being spirit driven. So, I'm connecting in with my intuition, with my higher power, and allowing my inner spirit to really guide me rather than being so driven to perform outside of myself. And that is, spirituality, as we know, is kind of like our grounding and really trying to connect there. And from spiritual men, we have to move into sexuality, right, Rick?
Absolutely. The two are very closely aligned, in my opinion. So one thing we talk a little bit about in MKP, but often don't dive into deeply, is our sexual expression, our sexual experience. How do we become, through our spirituality, whole sexual beings? How do we allow ourselves to express, all of us, sexually? And the truth is that society puts some pretty intense judgments on men's sexuality, how it's expressed, with whom it's expressed, and so forth. So learning to open up, love, and become comfortable with all aspects of your sexuality is deep, beautiful, powerful work. It has to do, again, with self-love. It has to do with spirituality. It has to do with authenticity. This, of course, all ties together. But we created, for example, a sexual Bill of Rights for men. You have the right to be a sexual being. You have the right to not be sexual if you don't want to. You have a right to partner with whomever fits for you, whatever is right for you, and so forth. It's actually a powerful statement that Leonard and I created, and you can read more about that on our website. But we believe that sexuality is critical. We can't pretend it isn't an important part of our aliveness, our expression in the world, and so forth. And that brings us to intention.
Yeah, and I think just adding on that, so it's really, growing up, men tend not to talk very openly and honestly about our sexuality. And that's what Rick and I wanted to open the door to really have an open, frank conversation. And then intention, of course, has to do with mission and having an intention. Obviously, everybody here had the intention to show up and to be connected with this community, Florida community. So intention is about really living out of that mission of service. And, my mission of service is to connect with spirit and use my words to inform, entertain, and inspire others to return home to love and inner peace. And just all of us have our own missions, and we have our shadow missions as well that we battle. But I'm aware of the time, so let's kind of move on to community, Rick.
Absolutely. I just wanted to say that Jeff's workshop that I caught the tail end of on mission was exactly what we're talking about, and exactly the idea that a man who's in mission serves the world, serves himself, serves his family, and lives enthusiastically. That brings us to community, which is the theme of this conference, and that is that we are better together. We are better together. Being in a group, being in a community that connects authentically, spiritually and so forth, is critical to our development. There's no way I'd be alive on this planet and certainly not be the productive, connected man I am if I hadn't found community. Before I did MKP, I didn't have a single man in my life that I trusted, that I confided in, that I really, frankly, that I cared about. And now I have not hundreds, but thousands, not only in my direct community of San Diego, my old community of Milwaukee, but all over the country, in fact, all over the world. What a gift to have men who love me, who see me, who care for me, and who allow me to do the same for them. Very, very important. And all of those 7 tools lead us to the last one, Leonard, which is?
Yeah, sovereignty, King. You know, if you go to our website, powertoolsformen.org, we have a questionnaire, and it says, "Are you the king of your life?" And I always tell my clients, it says, you know, I really want you to be the king of your life. And it's strange. Guy says, they kind of says, really, you do, you do? Well, we're meant to be the king of our lives, and this is not to be lording over other people, but it's really being the master and the king of our lives. Now, I believe that it's not just this mental construct, but our psyche is really geared to help us become the king. And I remember when I moved back to Chicago, I kept on seeing these king signs: King Car Wash, Burger King, King Cars. I said, what the hell? I'm seeing kings all over the place, because my psyche was saying, Leonard, you're meant to access your inner king to establish a life in your new city, which is when I returned back to Chicago. And we had this like our inner king. Of course, we have the other energies of magician, warrior, and lover, but the king is the one that's the guiding force that really that we're called to access, so they can lead our lives from the mission and access all the other aspects of our lives. So that's kind of I want to take the screenshot off, Rick, and move us back into community. And that's basically in a nutshell. If you want to learn more, you can always go to the website. And but you know, I think that it'd be really great to move into a breakout group, because we didn't want to give so much content and to you. The community of interacting and being in a breakout group with some maybe inquiry questions will be of help. So
great, Leonard. So if you have questions, just jot them down for now. We're going to have a Q&A at the end. But as Leonard said, we're going to move into a breakout room in a moment. Is that all set up, Michael? We're ready to go?
How many rooms do you want?
Well, Philip, you're going to do that. Okay. Why don't we put 3 men in a room? You can use Leonard and I in rooms if you'd like.
Yeah, include us in the rooms.
3 or 4. And let me give you some parameters. So let me go back to sharing for a moment. And I'll cut and paste this into the chat for you men so you can keep track of it. But there's 3 questions we invite you to look at. We're going to take about 15 minutes. So each of you is going to have a significant amount of time to dive into these thoughts. So question number 1, what walls or barriers have you built that prevent intimacy? Now we're talking about intimacy with yourself, and of course, intimacy with other men, other women, your children, your community. Second question, what biases or prejudices keep you separate from men? Even within your own group, sometimes there's men that you don't feel safe with, you don't connect with, whatever, because of those biases and prejudices that go unquestioned. And then number 3, based on your answers to these 2 questions, what is your action plan to build more community and connection for yourself and your men's group?
You know, aging, you know, Rick, you know, when we do we also had some comments about, oh, I want to get your book. Well, our book isn't out yet. We're still, and I was thinking, well, you know, the whole concept of aging came up, and I think, yeah, I don't think we really addressed that in our book, Rick, that I think we need to actually add something more about this whole aging process. So anyway, let's open up to anybody who'd like to share.
Now, what are your ahas from your breakout room?
Well, I'll take a shot at that very quickly. I get a sense that I'm not swimming in the deep end by myself. You know, Leonard offered some wisdom, some very powerful wisdom. Alan and I know each other very well, and but even into the larger group here, Rick, both my breakout room and this larger group, I've shifted away from just MKP work in the last couple of years, way into some other things that are spiritual and community. And I'm going to look at your website. I'll be looking forward to your book to see how I bring them all back together. So thank you. That's my takeaway from today in this session. Thank you for your work. I'm in.
Paul, thank you. Yeah, if you can't seed your group by bringing in all the great gifts that individual men have and the work they're doing outside of MKP, 12-step work, spiritual work, trainings, whatever it is, oh my God, bring it back and lead a group about that topic. It's fantastic. We talked about that in our group too. We had the Mike group. There was three Mikes, Michaels and me. Who else has a comment or aha that you got?
I have a question. So the word prejudice strikes me as something that goes from ancestry, like an oppression coming through that probably intersects with my shadows, but it stems from before I was born. And for me to distinguish a prejudice over, oh, this, let me answer you, Rick. I got the right way to, yeah, I treat them this way instead of that way. Well, I might be totally coming from shadow and totally missing the prejudice part. And so that's what I'm struggling with. And so putting that out in front of me is the only way I can start to maybe answer the question.
Yeah, I don't have any easy answers for that. I'm constantly diving into my prejudices, my biases, which came from, of course, from my upbringing, what I was told was safe and not safe, what good and not good. And it's reinforced by the media, by the movies we see, the newscasts, the newspapers, the way that people are depicted over, and it still happens today. So it's a constant process of me discerning the best of my ability, what's real for me, what's true about that person, and what's not, what's my bullshit, Andy. And you're right, it's ancestral. I mean, it goes way back. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
So I'm going to respond to, it was something actually, Rick, that you shared in your personal story and about the group and the divisiveness. So it has to do with this polarization that is happening. And I mean, this is really challenging. I'm just the incoming steward in Florida, and I had a man who I'd reached out to ask if he wanted to help with this, and he didn't respond back, and then finally responded back and said something like that I had made some political statement in a check-in, and he referred to the summer gathering a year ago where I had sung a song that had one line in it that had a political statement. And so, but the piece that you spoke to is the same thing. Like, if we're in a circle, and this is what's happening in society, if we sit together, there's a chance we can get along. But because we don't even share space together, like there is no, we don't go to the schools, and all this thing is happening. And so in that distance, I watch my own self, even with this man, watch me get angry, watch me judge more. I mean, it's really tragic. I mean, and I don't know the answers.
Well, I was just talking to MKP brother and a different group, and they had this conflict about the vaccines and anti-vaccines. And it says the polarization that came just about that issue. It's the polarization. And I think we have to create a brotherhood that encompasses us all. And it's not that easy. Not that easy.
No, and in Florida, it's roaring right now. I mean, you are the epicenter of a lot of what's going on politically and the conflicts too. All right, go ahead, John.
Yeah. So, a fundamental thing in my life that gets in the way of intimacy is my upbringing and training and tendency towards transactional relationships with people of all kinds. So that, Rick, if I come help you for an afternoon, then you owe me an afternoon help, and I'm going to hold you to it, and that came up for me and was brought home to me in a very explicit way by a warrior brother, and has been a real gift as I move through the last half of my life and try to be not so transactional, or at least be aware that I'm being transactional. And, real life thing right now is I have a neighbor who's trying to be my friend and wants to help me do something in my yard. And I am finding myself just really reluctant, and it's becoming a barrier to being friendly and intimate with him. Because I just don't want to owe him for having come and helped me on a hot Florida afternoon in my yard. So I really find that when I talk to men about that, I really find that to be kind of a common denominator, and just naming it for me has been very helpful.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jeff.
Because, I was going to say, Jeff, even if in compliments, or if I give someone a compliment, or someone gives me a compliment, and I have to watch myself. I say thank you, but then I feel like I have to reciprocate and give it back. It's like just to receive, like it's just kind of like you're saying, Jeff. So maybe a neighbor, just to receive his offer of help. Yeah.
As Rumi said, look for the ways in which I block love. Not.
Mm-hmm.
Whew, that's a beautiful quote that Leonard shared at the beginning.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Actually, Mike Berkman, I'm going to ask if you're willing to share your piece about spicing up your meal.
Yeah. Okay. So guys, I'm going to create a menu to have on the table. So after I've put out the food, I can look at it. I can share it with my son and my wife. What else do you want more of in your life with this meal? Do you want more intuition? Do you want more goal directedness? Working from those masculine and feminine traits that were shared with us earlier. And yeah, so to add, to direct the household conversation when we're at the table. For me, I need to keep that list in front of me because I can only work on one thing at a time, but it's nice to be thinking about all of them. There,
Wow, that's great. Hey, I want to share one other thing. In one of the blockages to my intimacy is, as a therapist, I tend to be problem focused, and so the woman I'm involved with, Gail, she says to me, you're always wanting to process, you're always wanting to dive into these problems. Can't we just enjoy being with each other? And I said, oh my God, this is therapist looking for more problems. Oh yeah, let's dive into the problems. So that's sometimes a blockage for my intimacy, to be able to just, hey, let's just enjoy being present without having to look for something to work on. And that just came up yesterday.
Right. Ah, thank you, man. Thank you. Our contact information for Power Tools for Men. A place to go. Our book isn't complete, but we've broken it up into 9 smaller books that are available. And we also have a webinar for each of those books. If you're interested, it dives into the tools that are available for each of these 8 classics skills. Feel free to check it out. There's lots of free information, lots of free stuff on powertoolsformen.org, or you can contact Leonard and I by email, powertoolsformen@gmail.com.
We put together a lot of blogs too, recent blogs that cover men in love, that cover spirituality, that cover sexuality, a whole bunch of things. So, here's our challenge that Rick and I, we're very passionate about this, and we're just trying to get the word out for men. We're in a world that men really need this, and you men are kind of like, I always see, pioneers. So we'd appreciate your help in getting the word out as well for us.
Any other questions before we sign off here?
This is Lou. I'll just make mention of something, and that is that there are a few of us here in the Florida region that have come up with a continuing education course for therapists, particularly, not exclusively, but particularly for women, techniques to help men get in touch and embrace their emotions. And I'm hearing, you know, I just clipped your Power Tools for Men. I'll take a look at it. We started it out as kind of an MKP thing. It's now turned out to be kind of MKP purged. So it's not about MKP, it's about the processes that the therapists have and, you know, informed by MKP. Nice. But I thought, you know, I'd like to maybe send that CEU course to you guys, because again, it sounds like you're kind of pushing in the same direction. So I guess it's a flipping around the commercial.
It's okay. This is collaboration. We're sharing resources. So I appreciate that, Lou. Love to see it.
Good.
Absolutely. So, men, we're complete. We'd be happy to hear any takeaways you have from today. And if there aren't any, then we'll turn it back over to Michael.
Yeah, and if you have any comments, you know, you can always just, as I said, email us, and we'll be happy to respond. And just want to say, Michael Malone, thank you so much for the invitation.
My gosh.
Really appreciate being here with you, men. You know, many blessings. Really, really glad to be here.
Leonard, Rick, thank you so much for honoring our Florida community with your heart, your wisdom, and your good and great spirits. We really appreciate you taking the time, getting up early on that West Coast and making a connection across the coast. So that's beautiful. We thank you so much, and we'll share this good information with the community.